Hello and welcome to Behind the Roleplay on Arc of Fire Gaming Network. I am your host, Arc of Fire. Today, we are doing yet another interview with a fellow roleplayer from the wide world of roleplaying and one of my friends. So here we go, and this is our next guest, Fenikzova.
Hello, Arc. How is it going? How are you doing this fine day?
Well, it's going pretty well, I'd say. I got my coffee, I've got a good conversation, and I am not burning up to death, so we're good.
Good. That's all anyone could really ask for. Yeah. So I'm happy that you wanted to have a chat. That always brightens my day. So
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you being here. You were one of the first persons I thought of when I wanted to put this together. So there you go. And I'm glad we were able to coordinate this. Now, I think what we need to know is about you, but more specifically at this juncture is that beautiful set of flowers on your head real quick. Tell me about those.
you want the flowers on my head. So I don't know why. I like to put accessorize, sort of, I guess. Just a weird quirk, I guess I have sometimes. So these are cat ears, technically, but they're just adorned with little flowers, and I just think it kind of makes things a bit more visually interesting, I suppose. I'm not really into like too much jewelry or rings and like I can't do earrings because I'm wearing headphones. So but yeah, I just like to kind of spruce it up, pun not intended. Yeah.
Well, I always notice that because I know your Discord icon is you with bunny ears. So
Yeah.
I've noticed you have a lot of head adornment, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's because where I stream a lot and where I can be on cam a lot, it's just kind of like what can I stick on my head that's not too obstructive but also just adds another element in there. And I just thought I've got so many ears. It's a weird thing to say. I have a lot of ears. I have like 7 pairs of cat's ears and a pair of bunny ears, and
Oh, wow.
and I've got like a golden Roman looking wreath thing as well, and it's so yeah, screw it.
Nice. All right. Well, on that note, Fenikzova, tell us a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about yourself.
Right. Yeah, as I've said before to people, this is always a difficult question because it's like, where do I start with this sort of thing? But I guess as we're talking about kind of role play and stuff like that, background on me in regards to where I come from with all of this, I would say for the longest time, I've been a console gamer who has always had a love for RPGs, and just games where you make decisions that affect the processes, that affect the outcomes, and stuff like that. A couple of years ago, not even a couple of years ago now, I'd say maybe a year and a half, I swapped over to PC gaming. Massive difference. A lot less chained. Consoles can be very restricting sometimes. But it opened me up to the idea of online role play, where I actually can role play with other people in almost a professional kind of sphere where it gets quite high tier. You're not role playing with NPCs anymore. You are interacting with other players. That kind of came in tandem at the same time as me getting into 5th edition D&D as well, with my in real life friends as well. And I'd been doing that for kind of a year, and it all kind of snowballed and happened at the same time. And then I joined Wild RP as an online server as well. And it's all kind of led to this point, I suppose. Yeah.
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 Okay. Excellent. Well, let's step right into it because you are a role player, and that's what I know you best as well as a, might I say, a very good Call of Duty player. And don't deny it because I've seen you laser beam on some stuff that I'm just, woo.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's very hit and miss. I like to describe my gaming type as paradoxical. It doesn't make sense. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm terrible. Yeah, it makes 0 sense.
I'm kind of like an oven with mine.
Okay.
It takes me hours to warm up, and then I only like cook for maybe a few rounds, and then I'm done. And it's usually
Right.
pretty horrible all the way up to that point. And then I pull out some stuff that I never thought I'd do. And then I'm done. I'm like, I'm off. I'm out of here.
He's kind of hit that sweet spot at the end there. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. All right. Finn.
Hmm?
Let's step right into this. So, the first character, the one that a lot of people know, specifically from some of your therapy sessions, is Dr. Cornelius Knight.
Hello, good day. As you're already aware, I am Dr. Cornelius Knight, and I'd like to thank you for trusting me with coming here today to utilize my services for some therapy. Just a little bit before we start, I just want you to know that within these four walls, this is a safe and confidential space. I've dealt with many criminals and innocents alike, so the things that I hear are of a very mixed nature. However, anything that I hear or write down stays within my mind, or as I said, within these four walls, as confidentiality is of utmost importance to me. So, with that said, I guess we should move on. Tell me, what ails you?
Well, tell us a little bit about him.
Oh gosh. Well, it's an interesting one to talk about because of who he is tied to character-wise.
Mm-hmm.
He was an ambitious project of mine because he is actually well, I don't know. How much do we go meta here? Because it's a little bit meta with Knight, I guess.
Oh, as much as you'd like.
Okay. So Dr. Knight is actually an alternate personality of another character.
Oh, yeah?
So he is within his own right a character, but he is essentially another character playing a character. So it's a player playing a character who's playing a character. There's a bit of Inception going on there. And
okay, I'm super intrigued now.
Yeah, exactly. And at first, they were kind of individualized characters. They weren't aware of each other because there was a psychological thing going on. Now they are aware of each other because one of the other characters got their memories back. Again, there's a lot of backstories. But Dr. Knight's whole thing is psychology.
Right.
And delving into people's minds and helping them understand their behaviors and why they might behave a certain way based on previous events surrounding trauma or kind of negative events or even positive events, and helping people connect between how they feel now and how they could feel based on what they could do, sort of thing. So he's essentially a therapist with a hard focus on psychological studies as well. He's not just a therapist, he is a psychologist, first and foremost. Yeah.
Okay. And where did you come up with the idea for this character? Like, what made you want to do that with a character?
Well, the first ever character that I made coming onto the server with Wild RP was actually someone called Reginald Blackwood. And he was very heavily based off of probably my longest standing 5th edition D&D character. And I brought him in and I played him for 3 days and I didn't quite click with him. And so I made another character called Bobby. And then I ran with that character. And Reginald got sidelined. In fact, it was only roughly 5 days ago that I actually pressed delete on Reginald Blackwood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so given that I've been in the server for about 6+ months now and only played him for 3 days, I've only just deleted them because I had a bit of sentimentality for the fact it was my first character. And I don't think anybody remembers that character, but it was still fond for me because it was where I kind of started learning and meeting people. So, but he was kind of Reginald Blackwood 2.0 in that he was well spoken, he was from London, he was well educated, he was kind of from a higher class, I guess, if we're going to bring classes into it. But instead of being in finances, which Reginald Blackwood was, he was a banker. I wanted to do med RP, but not physical med RP. So more from the perspective of exploring the mind and how the mind needs healing.
So did you do any research into that to be able to be a role play therapist, so to speak?
I actually did very minimal research. Without without going into too much background, I have had many years of therapy. So all I'm doing is applying my real life experiences and basically regurgitating them into roleplay, which I do with a lot of my characters. A lot of my characters have elements really drawn and taken from all of my real life experiences.
I like that.
Yeah. As young as a kind of, because some people have said to me, you don't have many life experiences. And I'm like, you'd be surprised because, but whatever.
So what it made me think of at first was, you could have somebody who's studying psychology and then tries to make that character. You have practical experience from the other end. And I immediately thought, like, because I know you want to do, or you have done therapy sessions in game.
Yes.
And you have practical experience. You can tell people. That's, to me, that's boots on the ground. I mean, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And I have a huge interest in psychology anyway. I studied a bit in school for psychology, but again, it was kind of low tier stuff, very basic stuff. But it did make me want to do a lot of research in my free time. So over the years, I have done a lot of kind of psychology research and how one thing affects another thing within the mind and sociology and group psychology and stuff like that. So I do have a lot of applied personal research that, funny enough, I've actually spoken to therapists that I've seen in the past before. And to the point where I'm like, helping me understand how psychology works is helping me to sit back and analyze my own actions. And then that way I've learned. And I'm using that to apply that through night to other characters. And I've been told it's kind of working. So that's positive, I think.
Yeah. So as we were talking, we went through Cornelius Knight and then Howard Sterling, one of your D&D characters, and how they're similar.
Yes.
How are they similar?
They're similar in that they apply logic to scenarios. So for those that understand 5e D&D, which a lot of people do now if you're into roleplay because it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
He was a sorcerer / warlock. So he was if he wasn't any of those classes, he would have been an artificer. He was a very learned person. He had a very high intelligence, despite the fact that his class is called for high wisdom. He was a very intelligence-based wisdom caster character. Weird. But he was because when I make my characters on D&D, I don't necessarily make them for what's going to give me the highest damage output.
Right.
I do it based on what's going to give me the most interesting RP.
Yeah.
So he was a wisdom caster with high intelligence and high perception and was very learned and liked books and liked studying and researching and stuff like that. And that's what Howard Sterling was. And I've applied that through into Cornelius Knight, in that Cornelius Knight likes to apply intelligence in wisdom-based situations. And he likes to research, and he finds that every patient or client that he interacts with, it's not just an opportunity to help them, but it's also an opportunity to extract methods and try methods that he can then use to help other people. So he sees every as an opportunity to learn more methods as well. And that's kind of what Sterling did. He had a weapon that was a bit like a turret rifle that he used to project magic through. And he used every fight or battle to kind of develop this design further as well, and be like, oh, that doesn't work and that does, and what if I could add this feature to the weapon to make it more efficient and stuff like that. He would take every scenario and social interaction and battle interaction to make things more efficient and more research based.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's kind of where they're similar. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes me think as you were talking about them, role players like us, we get into it. We get less about the min-maxing of the character and more about the actual depth and the flaws. Because I know that is a common thing. I won't necessarily call it a mistake, but a common thing among new role players is they want to min-max their character. They want to have the best of this and the least of the worst. But when you start getting into character development and all that kind of stuff, you just let go and you're like, that's fine. He can constantly miss every target he hits or he looks at, or he always says the inappropriate thing and gets himself into trouble, because in the end, min-maxing, it's fun for a minute and then you lose it. You don't get to longevity of the character.
And I have a very hard focus and ethos, and I didn't at first. I've given my forever in real life GM, I've given him some shit, like a lot, about, but this rule doesn't make sense, and oh, but you're stopping me from being able to do this badass thing because you're cracking the rule book out and stuff like that. And it was a very hard learning curve for me, and we butted heads a lot. Bless him. I love him to pieces, but boy, have I given him some shit over and arguments at the table that other people have been like, this is awkward, to the point where I've like stepped back and gone, okay, right, we need to talk about this. But it was through that I realized that failing forward is a thing.
Yes.
And especially in the later development stages of Howard Sterling, it was like, if I fail a 2-hit roll, it doesn't mean something necessarily hugely bad is going to happen. It could be that the gun that he's using misfires, or he misses the shot. Because remember, if you don't meet that AC roll, it doesn't mean you didn't fire the shot. For instance, it can mean that you missed them, or something that another player did to hit them the round before caused the enemy to recoil back, which means that you might have been on target when you fired, but by the time your projectile reached the enemy, he had then gone back. So the projectile then sails past.
Right.
There are brilliant ways to describe failing that don't necessarily mean, hey, your character's lame and sucks. And failing forward can also be sometimes, it creates another story arc. Something bad happened, but it creates more RP, you know? And that's what failing forward is. Like, there are so many people who play these roleplay games with the idea of, I just want to be an infallible badass.
Right.
When that gets boring. Winning all the time gets boring, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. That's wonderful. Failing forward. I love that. That's phrase of the day right there.
It's not a phrase that I can coin either. Somebody else said it to me as failing forward, but I'm passing on. I'm passing on that wonderful phrase. Yeah.
It's a great thing, and I know we all have those kind of keywords and sayings that help push us into something better, and that's one of them. So there is the Knight and Howard. So let's move on to your pretty famous character, I would have to say, one that everybody seems to love. And you have a very personal connection with this one. And that is the amazing and talented Vanya.
So, you want to know my name? I can give that to you for 3. My name is Vanya. Though that is all you need to know for now. And I see you around town. Interestingly. Snooping around. Most likely where you are not wanted, I believe. However, that's the thing. I notice things. I see things. And I think you want something. Information, perhaps. Well, here's something you must know about me. I can't be bought with money. My currency is secrets. And you want my secrets? You better come with your own. A secret for a secret.
And that was Vanya right there. So tell us a little bit about that character.
Oh, this one's easy and hard at the same time, because I have to decide what to cut down 5 hours worth of potential conversation. Vanya is my baby, I think.
Okay.
She's a very important character to me. There's a lot of personal connection to this character. I'll start from the top. She is a Russian lady, a young Russian lady who came over from Russia to New York when she was about 12 and then migrated to, I almost said South Carolina because I was thinking of SC. I meant Saints Crossing.
There you go.
And from there, that's where she's kind of forging her current adventures. She is mostly quite bubbly, but she is very intelligent.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, her backstory is, and I'm going to say it here in hope that nobody watches this and metas her backstory, because not a huge amount of people know. about her backstory. But from a young age, she was working in her family business as what is essentially, I want to say spy. It can sound a bit cheesy when you say that, but she was essentially a spy. She was somebody who gathered intelligence.
Right.
Now, as a young girl, she wasn't suspected of anything, because who's going to suspect a young child of being somebody who's gathering intelligence? If they're in the wrong place, they just cry and pretend they're lost, and then they move on, sort of thing. So her family utilized that, and she didn't have much of a childhood because of that. And then they had to flee the country because they probably, they did the intelligence gathering thing to the wrong people, so they had to go. So they went to New York and continued to do the same thing. Then her father passed away, so she decided to kind of leave and find her uncle, who's not a biological uncle. It's basically a very good family friend that when they were over in New York they met, and that was Uncle Ace. And she met up with Uncle Ace, and then Uncle Ace was doing his own thing, and she joined their gang called the Royals, to which she was called the Queen of Hearts. Everyone in the Royals had like their own name associated with the playing card, and she was the Queen of Hearts. Eventually that gang disbanded. The main members went and retired. She went with them. She got bored because she's young and fidgety, and she came back. And this is where we are now. And she's working for different people as a spy, gathering intelligence. She also has a particular skill set that, quite thankfully, from day one of making her, I had it in mind that she was also a lockpicker and a safecracker, and obsessed with dynamite. Like, she loves explosions. She finds them fascinating.
That seems about
and
right.
Then the devs brought in lockpicking, safecracking, and dynamite. And I was like, this is perfect. Fantastic. Because now there's actual mechanics to back up this character's skill set, which I was very happy about. But yeah, at the moment, she's kind of working some jobs, forging relationships. And she's an interesting one because she's intelligently very good, but emotionally not very. So she's either emotionally unavailable or too emotional.
Right.
She can't strike a balance. Having had much of a childhood, she has this desire to be wanted and loved and adored, and she loves attention. But on the other hand, her job is spy, which is difficult because spies should not want to be wanting the spotlight on them. They're supposed to be covert. So she's in this kind of dilemma all the time of, I want to be noticed, but I can't because it would jeopardize what I'm doing. And that plays with her a lot, especially when she wants to forge relationships with people.
That sounds good, because what I'm hearing is an old West version of James Bond. Is what I'm getting a picture in my head, like
a little bit.
Yeah.
The one distinction I would say is that, it's funny, this is coming up a lot recently with a lot of people that I talk to about spies, is that James Bond isn't a spy. He's an agent.
Right.
And the clear distinction between the two is that spies gather the intelligence to give to the intelligence officer, who then gives that information to the agent to then go and carry out their mission. So at the moment, Vanya is a spy, intelligence gatherer. She won't necessarily do something that an agent would do. However, her current arc is kind of going along the line of, she's potentially trying to elevate herself to being an agent.
Field training.
Now she's working, kind of. I mean, she can handle herself for sure, but at the moment she's working with people that are now feeding information to her, which means she's gathering less information, and she's more networking with people who are bringing information to her. So she's kind of building up that sort of network for herself, because she's been doing this a long time. So she doesn't want to do that forever, because she realizes that where she used to be in Russia, and she's not young anymore, she can't use the same tactics that she used to use. So now she's kind of trying different methods.
Well, yeah, and as the characters grow, you want them to grow so that they can become more complex and more of something you want to play. No doubt, some of our characters, we just like playing them no matter what. They you don't want them to exceed a certain amount, but then Sometimes you do. You want them to grow as a person. Because I know, like Nathan, he's become a lot more active, a lot more boisterous. He talks to more people. He's more willing to do spy-like behavior than he ever was before, because his history kind of comes from a bodyguard background. But the character grows, and that's the point. Is Vanya is started at one section and then moves into a different character, still keeping her original, but then adding so much more depth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've told me that character is very similar to a D&D character you have named Lamza. Is that right?
Not really. I would say voice-wise a little bit. Lamza is... It's funny. Lamza, actually, I would say is kind of the polar opposite in regards to attitudes, as Vanya. Lamza is a very strong tiefling. For anyone that knows what this means, she's a Zariel tiefling, which means instead of getting the usual buffs, she gets a strength buff instead. And she was actually raised by an orc horde. So she has an orc temperament. She doesn't really speak common. She tends to just speak orcish. So in the party dynamic, it's difficult. She grunts a lot. She wants to fight the biggest thing, even if it makes no logical sense. And she's not necessarily quick to temper, but she is impatient and gets bored quick. I would say that's probably one similarity she has with Vanya. Lamza gets very bored very quick. So does Vanya.
So what's the voice dynamic between the two, if you can give us an example?
So for a long time, Lamza didn't have a voice because she there was no point in speaking Orcish because nobody in the party understood it.
Right.
So it'd be a lot of grunts, or she would point to something and replicate a word that somebody said in common that she thinks means something. So she would point at something and she would say kill. But like, you wouldn't know if she was asking if they want her to kill it, or she's saying that we should kill it, or it was difficult. So that character relied heavily on body language and facial expressions, like a lot. So when COVID hit, and we went into lockdown, and we weren't necessarily doing virtual we were doing virtual sessions, but I didn't have a camera at the time.
Right.
So it was so difficult playing that character because I could not convey the emotion on her face to anyone at all. So it became very difficult to play her. So we kind of worked into the story that there was an entity that was teaching her common, so she was be able to get things in gradually. And I wanted her voice to be modeled off of Cassandra from Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Right.
I wanted her to have this Greek kind of feel to her because to me, she was this goddess warrior type character. But she ended up kind of devolving back into Russian because I have this weird canon in my head that all tieflings sound Russian. I don't know why. But I like it because I have another tiefling character called Tyranny, and he's just this big burly Russian guy, and he's like, move or be moved, that sort of thing. And whereas Lamza, let me try and do Lamza. It's been a while. So if I was to do Lamza, it would kind of be like, just, do you want me to kill this one sort of thing? But like, it would be even more broken than that. That's how long it's been since I've played her. But she would sniff people a lot. Sniff. She would sniff people a lot because she was very, she was a little bit feral almost at times. And she'd sniff people and she'd just party and just be like, this one smells funny sort of thing. And then she'd just go back to saying nothing. And she didn't talk often, unless she was screaming or threatening people. Kind of. But most importantly, she wasn't a murder hobo. She didn't just kill for the sake of killing. I want to make that clear. I'm not a murder hobo player. I've never been. But I think in the wrong hands she could have been, I think. But yeah, she was kind of like stern. It was kind of like it would be like, if you keep talking, I will kill you sort of thing. It was like very short and sharp, and she wouldn't say much more than that, really. Whereas Vanya doesn't shut up at times.
That's interesting because, like, I hear in the voices, I've heard Vanya's, I've spoken with Vanya, and then hearing you talk about Lamza, and I'm like, it's another universe version of Vanya. Like if you were to set them onto like split them apart in a completely different multiverse, these two, you know, and I love it. I love hearing the dynamic difference between the two. They're similar, but they're kind of different. It's wonderful.
Yeah. It's weird. You could so it's a bit like dominoes in that if you lined up all my characters in the correct order, it would be like a spectrum. So you'd be like,
Yeah.
that character has a similarity with that one, which then has a similarity with that one, and then you could thread them all together, sort of thing. But one end of that scale, like there's a character on this end and a character on this end, you would be like, no, they're miles apart. But there would be characters in between that you could like tenuously link your way through, sort of thing.
Exactly. Which brings us to one of the first characters that ever spoke to me when I joined the server and kept me from walking out into the middle of a sheriff station being robbed. And you're like, stay there, don't move, is Bobby. We sat behind a crate and drank coffee.
Hey, is that coffee?
Yeah, it is.
Got any spare?
No, I accidentally dropped it. I had to go get another one. You want one? I'll go get you one.
No. Stay here. Don't give us away. Don't give us away. I've got some brandy here or some shit.
I dated a girl named Brandy.
Shit. Don't know why I stood up to take a drink. That's very strange.
Well, just to make sure it gets into your legs. All that alcohol.
Yeah, you shouldn't drink crouching. It's not good for you. Get your hiccups.
We did, and just watched everything unfold, basically.
Yeah.
Bobby Johnson. Wow. Bobby is the reason Bobby's kind of the reason I'm on the server in the capacity that I'm on the server. He was my first main character for Wild RP and my first ever main server-based character. And I think the reason I played him for so long and the way I played him was because I found him easy to play.
Yeah.
Which was good for kind of cutting my teeth, you know, and getting used to things. I find it very easy to do his voice. I find it very easy to think the way he thinks and kind of just have fun with him, if that makes sense. And at the time, there weren't too many British Cockney sounding people on the server. And I also noticed that a lot of people on the server were very, how do I say, stereotypically attractive. Like they all had these really attractive qualities and the way they carried themselves. But I wanted to make somebody that was like grizzled,
right?
You know, but not to the point where he was like there were some hillbilly characters that you like would want to stay away from. Like, oh my god, they're like so crazy and kooky. Whereas I wanted somebody that had attractive qualities, but they weren't necessarily stereotypical. So looking at him, he was bald, he was aging, he was stocky. So he was like, do you know when you get like that muscle, but you've got like muscle fat sort of thing? Whereas like he's not like this ripped guy who like always knows what to say and he's got this perfect hairline, and he was nothing like that. And I just wanted to play a guy that was just kind of like soft and hard at the same time.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. I totally get that. I mean, that's the reason it stuck out in my head so much when I first met the character, because I haven't had that many interactions with the character. But I remember the hat, and I remember the coffee, and how crazy that scenario was. And the character stuck out in my brain. And that's like when you brought the character back for a brief moment recently, Nathan was ecstatic. I haven't seen this person in forever. Where are they?
Yeah, I was actually quite shocked that when I brought him back in, quite a few people had that reaction, which really warmed my heart, because I get very insecure or very paranoid about my roleplay and whether I'm having enough of an impact on people's stories, not to the point where I'm purely influencing those stories, but to the point where I make a memorable experience.
Right.
So when I brought Bobby back, there were people that I didn't think would care that cared. And that really kind of meant a lot to me when they expressed that.
Right.
And Bobby's been around a lot more recently. He's actually, a couple of days ago, been embroiled in a very serious kind of storyline as well. So Bobby's back. but not in the same capacity he was before, because he went from how you knew him on that day with the sheriff's office to being the leader of an organization that controlled part of Saint Denis, to then disappearing entirely, which is another reason why Dr. Knight exists. But disappearing entirely and then coming back and then having to deal with everybody saying, well, you abandoned us, or things fell apart because you left and it's all your fault and why did you do this? And then there's guilt, and then having to rebuild those relationships and meet new people again. And it's kind of, that character's absence has actually still driven some story.
Right.
And that was really interesting to deal with as well.
Gotcha. Well, he's definitely a missed character, and I'm glad that he's back on the server every once in a while, and I'm looking forward to having an adventure with him at some point. I mean, even if it's just going fishing and shooting the shit.
yeah. Which I like to do sometimes on my characters, because sometimes doing 24/7 serious.
Yeah.
Or everything's so serious and everyone hates each other and there's gossip, and sometimes it leads to burnout a little bit quicker. Just, you got to have those downtime moments,
Yeah, I like to. My downtime moment of not even really role playing is going into the mine in Strawberry. I'm earning money. I set up a fire. I turn on something on Netflix or something, and just kind of enjoy being in the game and the atmosphere, just the aesthetics of what Rockstar made, because it's a gorgeous game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my characters a couple of days ago was literally saying, you should, like, she was jokingly saying to some law enforcers, you should ban horses. And they kind of got it, because there was this one instance where I walked all the way from Van Horn back to Saint Denis and got lost, but I was on foot the whole time. And do you know what? Walking through the swampy areas, I was like, I don't even know this was here.
Yeah.
And just experiencing the noises and the light coming through the trees and the non-dangerous wildlife as well, and just seeing it all. And I was like, I don't notice any of this when I'm riding past it on a horse at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Like, you don't see it, you don't take it in.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if you walked everywhere for a bit, you'd really get a good experience, a better experience of the game.
I think that just spawned an idea in my head that our characters can kind of sponsor, get people to kind of a walking trip, get a bunch of people together.
Like a walk to work scheme.
Yeah, and we all just kind of walk from like Blackwater to Valentine, like 20 of us, just walking and talking, stopping,
just
smelling the roses,
having a conversation, enjoying the sights. Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's a terrible idea, because I think some people would really appreciate that, because there are some areas that are perfect, like really perfect for it.
All right. Well, that's good. I can't wait to see more of Bobby, which leads us into a character I've never experienced, but you labeled it as Star Wars, so my ears went, what? So I want to know as much as you can possibly tell me, and I'd love to hear from Dr. Athena Black.
Perfect. Okay. Let me give you a synopsis on this character, because they're one of my newer characters. I started a Star Wars TTRPG, or joined a campaign probably about a month to 2 months ago now. And we play on Sundays. And we were all making our characters, and I thought, who could I make? Because I don't have the best knowledge of Star Wars. I like Star Wars. I wouldn't say that I am the biggest nerd for it, because I don't know everything about it.
You're talking to a big nerd right now.
Yeah. So I have to be careful what I say. But she is a scientist. She is a cyber tech expert, doctor, who also specializes in xenobiology. And her whole thing is experimentation on subjects to see what she can develop further in the fields of xenobiology and genetics and cyber tech. And I'm talking like cybernetics, like implants and cyborgs and stuff like that, which is a side of Star Wars I never really saw when I used to watch the movies. But the TTRPG does outline that that's possible. So I wanted to kind of touch along grittier sides of Star Wars, because as as gritty as Star Wars can be with the dark side of the Force and stuff like that, they're very clear cut with their morals. Dark side bad, light side good.
Right.
Balance. Pain and fear and hate fuels the dark side, and the alternate fuels the light side. But I would like to take Dr. Athena down the path of, to her, she thinks she's a good person.
Right.
To everyone else, they probably would label her the Doctor of Death. In fact, the party label her as the bad doctor, because we have another doctor in the party who is a morally good, is it pronounced Twi'lek or Twi'lek?
Twi'lek, yeah.
Twi'lek. So she's a morally good Twi'lek doctor, medical doctor, and she gets referred to as the good doctor. But she has this whole, excuse me, sorry, wow, that drink's coming back on me. She has this whole backstory of she's actually an Arcanian offshoot.
Okay.
But nobody knows that. People think she's human. She has some of the physical qualities. She's got very bright white hair. She has naturally pure white eyes, but she wears these contacts. She wears these bright pink iris contacts. And she's actually an Imperial scientist. So the Imperials have hired her as a scientist.
Right.
Because they allow her to do some very morally bad things in her experimentation. And especially given that she does a lot of xenobiology work, the Imperials don't like xenos.
Right.
So they've probably captured a lot. So she has the pick of the crop that she wants. I want that xeno. I want that xeno. I want to practice on that xeno.
Right.
And as far as she's concerned, she doesn't care how she does it. Whatever she needs to do to advance her work, she will do. But her ultimate goal is to destroy the Arcanians. Because her offshoot were genocided by the pureblood Arcanians. Because she's essentially a human Arcanian offshoot hybrid. And the Arcanian pureblood aristocracy or whatever deemed the offshoot to be too effective.
Right.
So they were threatened. So they just went, nope, we're wiping that out because that's too dangerous. We don't need anyone that could potentially rival us in intelligence and how we operate. So they just went, no, gone.
Right.
So Athena is one of the last of her kind. Not that anybody knows that. And she's devoting her life to, in a very convoluted way, doing what she can to essentially destroy the Arcanian purebloods. So she's
So what does Athena sound like? What's the voice?
So it's difficult. I'm still kind of fleshing it out, but she's got this steely, icy tone to her. You feel insulted whenever she talks to you, even if she's not directing an insult at you. So there was one instance where there was a pilot, and he was like, "Oh no, I want to be useful to the party. Like I don't want Dr. Black to use me in experimentation." And she basically just turns around and goes, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'm not interested in your genetic makeup." So it was a backhanded compliment of, "Oh, don't worry, I won't hurt you, but genetically you're uninteresting."
Right.
So it was like she was trying to just say, "Don't worry, you're safe," but she couldn't do it by just saying, "Don't worry, I won't experiment on you."
Right.
She gave a backhanded, spiteful reason for it by basically saying, "You're basic. Like, I'm not interested in you," sort of thing. And that's the kind of character she is. And she doesn't pipe up too often because she lets the party squabble amongst themselves. Like, the party dynamic is like 2 or 3 of them fight over who's the captain of this ship. And then Athena will just, whilst they're fighting, will just walk into the captain's quarters and close the door. She's like, "This squabble is petty and stupid. I'm the most intelligent here. I should be in charge." But she won't say it. She'll just go in the captain's quarters and just make it her home. And that's what she does.
I guess we're all sleeping on the floor.
Basically. Yeah, basically. That's what she's a sneaky one. She's a very sneaky one.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a great character for a tabletop role-playing game. The question I have for you, the final one, is what version of tabletop Star Wars roleplay do you use?
So it's This is Fantasy Flight
Yeah.
Games. And we're doing, what's it called?
Edge of the Empire.
It's Edge of the Empire. It's
Okay.
Edge of the Empire. Yeah. I was struggling to remember. Yes, it's Edge of the Empire.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good mechanic. It's supposed to be focused around storytelling and less about all the numbers and everything like that.
Absolutely. It's totally reflected in the dice rolls. It was because I was used to 5e and only 5e
Mhm.
for D&D. It was like really weird getting used to the dice, but I get it now. And it's great that you can fail your roll but still have advantage. Like, again, you can have something good happen even if you fail a roll.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And that really resonated with me because of the whole failing forward
Right.
thing
Right. Exactly.
as well. Or you can have a success, but it like really puts you in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, I succeeded in this thing, but something bad's going to happen now. Because, like, oh, I did hack that terminal, but it set off an alarm. For instance, this is a really bad example. I would be a terrible GM for this game. But it set off an alarm. So yes, I succeeded in what I wanted to do, but it has alerted some people, which now puts us under stress.
Yeah.
So
It makes me think of that scene in Batman when he's getting training and he's got the sword over Liam Neeson and he goes, "But you don't have your footing," and he breaks the ice and he falls through the water. You're like, you thought you won, but you didn't.
yes, exactly. And I love that. There's some brilliant story-driven stuff in that. And I think it's interesting, and it really works with the character that I've made because my character is not a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
She will find her way out of a situation. So there was one instance where the ship was being fired on from within the ship, and she walks into the captain's quarters, locks the door calmly, lets everybody duke it out. She's not firing her holdout blaster or anything. She works on the terminal, watches it from the cameras, and then realizes there's a massive red button because this was a custom ship. This was basically a Black Sun. Is it Black Sun or Black Star?
Black Sun.
Black Sun. It's a Black Sun ship that they procured. And it's a big red button because this particular thing has been decked out.
Mm-hmm.
She hits it out of curiosity, and it sucks all of the air out of the ship.
Oh gosh.
Except for the captain's quarters. And she's watching on the cameras, and all her reaction is, interesting. And she's not like panicking that her party's now choking out. And she's just watching. And then she just like fishes around for a rebreather, like really calmly, and goes, okay. And she puts it on. She opens the door. And then there's just like one of the party members just like clutching at her feet. And then he like that party member goes in there and then just like realizes and slams the red button again, and it like starts repressurizing the cabins or whatever. And she's just walking around like everything like that. And during the whole process, the people that were firing at us on the ship have tried to get off the ship, and they've managed to hit the ramp disengager, and they're going down the ramp. And she just walks up to the top of the ramp and just watches them, and then just goes back in the ship again. She's like so steely calm during the whole thing. She'll never fire unless she absolutely has to.
Yeah.
She will find another way if she can to get rid of people. Albeit this was a little bit accidental, but as soon as it happened, she was like, this is beneficial. And then the rest of the party were like, didn't you care that you were choking out? And she was kind of like, not really. And I love playing her. She's so fun to play.
That sounds great, man. I want to play with you guys now. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, we have an Imperial security droid that is programmed to think he is the captain. It's brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a Rhodian bomb maker who is has a spice addiction and is really really scatty until he does like a dose of spice, and then he is the most chilled, calm, like focused character. The difference between scatty Kibo and focused Kibo is it's a wicked divide to witness. It's really good. Yeah.
Nice. Well, all right. So those are your characters we went through. I love them. Those were dynamic. You are definitely a dynamic role player. And that's good. And that's an inspiration to anybody looking to get into it. You should definitely check out Finn's channel and all the things she's a part of, because you can learn something. You're going to learn today, son. You're going to learn. So the last thing we need to go through, and this is wonderful because, you know, the character voice you're trying to do is where I'm from. You said you wanted to work on particularly Evelyn Winter, which is kind of a Southern voice, an American Southern voice.
Yeah. I played her for a short while and I did the voice and I was always super self-conscious of it. And I never knew if I was nailing it or not.
Right.
And maybe to someone that has an untrained ear, they might have thought, yeah, that's American. But I really wanted to nail down the state because you in America have so many accents and subtle nuantic differences. And much like in the UK, every 20 miles our accent changes in the UK. But in America, you do it like almost per state. And sometimes like the difference between a north and a south of the state can be different.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
As well. So I wanted to kind of nail it down to an area, you know.
So let's hear it. Let's I want to talk to Evelyn Winter right now. Nathan wants to talk to Evelyn Winter.
Right. So let's see. It might take me a second to get into this one, so I might have to take a couple of stabs at it. But Evelyn Winters, Evelyn. See, even then, like I have to sit there and calibrate and think about it. So,
Evelyn Winters.
Evelyn Winters. Right. I just want to ask y'all a few questions, and then we can proceed to the next stage of the interview. Would that be okay?
Well,
that's kind of where I was at.
Well, interview? What kind of interview you talking about? You gonna get on a stream cam and talk about shit? Come on now, Evelyn. Try a little bit harder. I mean, if you're supposed to be from Georgia, you're not convincing me there, little lady.
Fudge. Well, I have parents from different locations. No, I can't bring that out. I've used that cop out so much. Like, I'm from this place, but my parents were from different places, so my accent is slightly different. Yeah, I've used that a couple of times. It's a bit cheese.
So I've got a few techniques for you.
Please do share them.
First off, called tang, which not tang as in the orange drink or tang as in a part of a sword, more like tang. So you got to put the tang. So Nathan has well, that's what I'm talking about. And it goes up and then dips down and then back up. But it's not a question. Okay. It's not a question. So, and that's what I tell people when they're trying to do UK accents, is a lot of Americans fail at it, was when they talk. They like to say like they're asking a fucking question, and all they're doing is just talking normally, and they always raise it up and raise it up. And I'm like, are you asking questions the whole time, or are you just an idiot? So when I tell them to do a British accent, I say, drop it at the end. You have to purposely think to drop it. So, how you doing today? How you doing today? You have to drop it. So with an American accent, you have to raise it, but not ask a question. So in order to do that, you have to go, is your name Finn? Is your name Finn? Is your name Finn? Is your name Finn?
Right. So when I think about and processing that, there's a lot more tongue movement.
Exactly.
In the mouth. And that is obviously it's the movement of the tongue mid-word that is kind of making that word almost seem a lot more musical than standard. So whereas I would say standard, I would imagine that for, especially as a Southern American accent, it's more like standard. Like standard. You know, it's like it's almost like vowels have two parts to them. At least that's how I'm imagining it.
Well,
I think.
So what I know for me, and I'm betting this is the same way with you, I have found the history of where the accent comes from is very beneficial. For you, it's going to be incredibly beneficial. The deep Southern accent actually originates from Scotland.
Right. Okay.
So think of Scottish, then think of Scottish music. Think of high society, and then drop it into jazz. So you kind of move there because Celtic music and jazz are from the same family. They actually meld together as far as the tones and whatnot. And then the word I like to tell people to say is cottage cheese. Say that with an accent, with an American Southern accent.
Cottage. That's difficult.
You want some cottage cheese?
Cottage cheese. Cottage cheese. Do y'all want some cottage cheese?
The word cottage cheese had so many changes in it that it helps you. Like, it's a good trigger for a Southern accent. Cottage cheese.
Cottage or cottage?
It depends on what
Cottage.
region you're from.
Right. So if we were saying Georgian,
Right. Cottage
would
cheese.
we say cottage or cottage?
It's a CA from Georgia, and then if you're from higher north, it's cottage.
Cottage.
Yeah.
Cottage
cheese.
Cottage cheese. Yeah. Okay. Cottage.
Cottage cheese.
Right.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean, you can essentially, if you want to, you can just mimic Nathan, because this character developed out of my southernness, and then when I work with some people at my current job who have deep southern accents, it kind of developed out of that one, and then being kind of a stereotypical, like high-pitched, gets classified as the wrong type of person constantly. Stupid motherfuckers. So, and that was funny, is like, motherfucker. I had to learn how to say that in his accent, because I say motherfucker. Nathan says, motherfucker. And my lip drops.
Motherfucker. Motherfucker. See, I'm... Oh, damn it. Gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it.
Drop darn more.
Darn.
Deeper.
Darn.
Darn it.
Darn.
Gosh darn it.
Gosh.
Not Goofy.
I'm heading into Goofy. Gosh darn it.
Well, so you can use elements of that for that piece, because, like, as an example is when you do Cornelius Knight or Bobby, you have a deeper accent. So, so take Nathan, and then he has a higher pitched kind of southern twang, and then randomly drop Dr. Knight in the middle of a syllable of a word.
Okay. What would be a good word for that?
Cottage cheese.
Cottage? So, if I was to say cottage cheese, cottage.
Cottage cheese. Cottage. Cottage. Cottage.
Cottage?
Well,
Cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese.
Well, I find it easier to do as a male, I think.
I'm gonna get myself some cottage cheese.
Would that
was
work
good.
better?
That was sounding more southern. That was good.
Yeah. So here's the problem. Because I have to essentially voice act 24/7 to bring my voice to where it is, naturally, because that's obviously not biologically my voice.
Right.
Doing an accent and then applying it onto a female tone is where sometimes I struggle. So getting a southern accent as a male for me is obviously a lot easier than doing it with a female.
Right.
Because when you say you want to drop it, it's hard to not drop the pitch or tone at the same time.
Right.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
So I would say what I had to do for Nathan is I had to take my hand and put it on my voice box so I could feel it. Because what I found when I first really started to get into Nathan was I was straining constantly to the point where I thought I was going to have to give up the character because I was going to hurt myself. And then I had a voice actor friend of mine help me and tell me what to do as far as how to keep my own voice but keep Nathan's and not strain so much, and that's where the twang came in. And what I do is I had to grab my throat a little bit and then feel when I was overstraining it and then just relax while doing that. So you may do the southern accent like that, and then you'll notice as you're touching it that you're overly straining the entire time to do that, as opposed to being able to voice tense, relax. It's a similar concept to like martial arts, in which you want to stay loose until you're tight. It's the same thing, because you don't want to overextend. You don't want to exaggerate so hard that your voice hurts. And the Southern's the same way. So just think of tang or twang. That's
Tang
twang.
Or tang or twang?
Twang.
Twang.
TWAANG. Twang.
twang.
All right. All right, Miss Winter.
Yeah.
Miss Evelyn Winter, now, I brought you on this train as security because you seem to know how to talk to people. So I need you to talk to this fella right here and let him know he needs to keep his gun holstered or I'm going to kick him in the nuts. So I can't handle him right now, so you need to talk to him.
Okay, well, I can most certainly do that. So leave that with me.
That was good. You sounded more like a question. A little bit.
Leave that with me. Leave that with me. Me.
Right.
I think it's down at the end. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Leave that with me.
Me?
Yeah.
Leave that with me. Leave that with me. Leave that with... So should I... Because I was always told that for Georgian, I should drag things out rather than end them abruptly. So to basically drawl it out. So like, you wouldn't say, I'm from Georgia. You would say, I'm from Georgia.
You can do that. I wouldn't do that all the time because as what you were just saying, the sentence you were saying, it sounded stereotypical and not natural.
Okay, perfect. Because I don't want to hit the well, yeah, I'm tried not to hit the stereotypes unless it's my own accent, in which case, yes, Bobby and Knight are both huge stereotypes. But okay. So I'm gonna go up to the guy then and be like, excuse me, sir. Sir?
Sir, how you doing, sir?
How you doing, sir?
Right. And so you can prime yourself with that as well. Is like instead of just going sir, you can go how you doing. If it's words that you know very well for Southern, which how you doing you did perfect on, you can prime that because my whole point behind voice acting is the element of immersion. I want to stay immersed. So when I'm talking with Nathan, I want people to be immersed in that accent and not be distracted by it, so to speak. And then I think you do that great with all of your characters. They love listening to you. I love listening to you when you're talking to Vanya because I'm like, what's she going to say next? What's she going to say next? But if you get some characters, they're over exaggerated everything and you're like, okay, got it. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I try to keep in mind when it comes to voice acting as a character, and it's not just accent, it's also the words that are used and how they're said. So I wouldn't say how are you doing as Evelyn Winters. It would be how you're doing. There would not be well, I mean, howdy is literally a shortened version of how you're doing, essentially, right? Just like goodbye is God be with you. And again, when I do Bobby, there's a lot of things Bobby say that people don't understand because it is the words that a British Cockney person would use.
Right.
So he would say, "You all right, mate?" Instead of saying how, like Bobby wouldn't say how are you doing necessarily. He wouldn't pass someone in the street and be like, how do you do? Like he wouldn't do that. He'd be like, you're right, mate. He'd be like, that's how that character would say it because that's what they say in that region.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the accents immersive, not just from the sound, but from what they say and how they say it as well.
Very important.
Yeah.
So a phrase I'd love for you to try to say.
Here we go. Uh-oh. Yeah.
Ain't no thing but a chicken wang.
Oh, no. All right. Okay. Ain't no thing but a chicken wang.
That was good. That was very good.
Was that too Dixie South? Was that too...
No,
like,
that was perfect. That was great.
Like too Dolly Parton there?
No, that's good. It's all chicken but the bone.
It's all chicken but the bone.
But the bone.
But the bone. It's all chicken but the bone. It's all chicken but the bone. It's 100% chicken apart from the bone. Yeah.
That's the clinical way to say that, sure.
Yeah. I was trying to find enough way around it.
There you go.
Because there's like if you really nail when it comes to like regional dialect, I guess some dialects leave like the beginnings of certain words out. Like just then I didn't say apart, I said part. So instead of apart from the bone, I just said part from the bone. Would that work?
Oh yeah, you can drop letters and syllables out of words and just use the accent and you're completely fine. I've noticed that with Nathan recently is when I'm really getting into it, I have to find the video footage, but I'm dropping words like crazy and saying it like ass backwards. And then I think to myself and I went, no, it's fine. Like me, no, I would never talk like that. But Nathan saying that fits perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he comes over there, he gonna get that all right. Come on now, pick it up off the floor.
Flower. I love that. Flower.
Floor.
Yeah, because I wouldn't think that. I'd just say flow. I'd say flow.
Yeah.
Instead of flower. So, and then that's the point where I'm like, am I dipping Georgian or am I going towards like Louisiana? Am I going further south? Am I going further north? Like, what am I doing here?
Right.
You know, where am I? Sort of thing.
Well, it's one of them things, you know what I mean? And this is me trying to talk normal. I can't do it. Like, I can't speak that way and not speak like Nathan. But you can, my personal accent isn't as Georgian as most Georgians or Southern as most Southerns because my father was from the Midwest and my mother was Southern Belle. So my accent is kind of a bastardization of both. And then my father always did British accents when I was a kid and I watched British comedy. So I have to like, I give you an example. I was around a guy at work for about 3 years who was deep South, like, oh my gosh. And my father came and visited me one time.
Okay.
Because I live in Alabama now. And he came from Georgia and visited me. He goes, man, you have been in the deep South for too long, Devin. And I was like, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go.
I mean, so it's interesting because, I mean, the world is such a melting pot anyway now that even if you come from an area in the world, you might not even have, even if you were raised in an area of the world, you might not have that accent for some reason.
Right.
So where I come from, I'm very close to London. I'm very close to Southeast London. They don't talk how I talk. They're a lot looser and a lot more casual with their wording. Whereas even though my mother is from South London and my father is from essentially here, he's always lived here, he's never moved from here. We're southeast of, so we're in Kent. And there are a lot of kind of middle-class accents here, but there's also a lot of London and there's a lot of Essex. Essex is also quite fast and loose as well. You can identify an Essex accent quite easily. But for some reason, I have this, I mean, my nickname in school was Posh Twat because despite who I was around, I enunciated a lot more than other people around me. So if I overextend that and pretend I work for the BBC, it goes, and welcome to the 12 o'clock broadcast for BBC Radio 2. And it becomes very, they call it RP, received pronunciation.
Yeah.
Which Americans also do, and obviously they called things mid-Atlantic accents as well, because it's like a mixture of American and English in regards to accents, and they call it mid-Atlantic because it's in the middle. There's nothing actually in the mid-Atlantic apart from Bermuda. I don't know. But yeah, and that's why they call that, and that fascinates me as well. The fact that there's posh American, which saying that sounds weird because you don't think posh American, but there is such thing as kind of posh American, right? And it's really interesting to think about. But there's so many accents. Yeah. So many.
Well, I hope today's
that's why
helped.
It's easy to... you know what? It has. And I think I'm going to do a bit more research again on that because I think one of the reasons I haven't brought that character back in is because I've been nervous about that accent. Because... Which is silly because there's a lot of Americans doing English accents on the server, and I don't turn around and go, "Oh, that's a terrible English accent. Why they bother doing that?" So I'm thinking, even if I fluff the American just a little bit, like maybe I won't come under fire so bad. I guess it's a confidence thing.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is believability, not in a sense that it's perfect, but that you don't break into the middle of a Southern accent into British. And to the point where they're like, wait, what? So you keep
then the character
immersion.
changes.
Right. Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you, Finn, for doing this today. This is by far probably the longest interview, and I kind of expected it, to be completely honest with you. No, you're good.
Yep.
Thank you, and you can check out all of Finn's related things down in the show notes and or after the show. and on my Discord. You are welcome to join. And thank you, everybody. And we're just going to go ahead and end it right here. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next exciting adventure of Behind the Roleplay. Bye.
Bye.
Mister?